everybody, welcome back once again to another episode of The Art of Photography. My name is Ted Forbes, and today we're going to talk about a very well-known photographer. I usually try to, when I do these kinds of episodes with the book reviews and stuff, is to turn people on to people who are, sometimes well-known, but not exactly mainstream in terms of, the culture of photography on the internet and things like that. However, today I'm going to pick one that probably a lot of you are familiar with. This is Annie Leibovitz, and if you don't have this book, this is a must. It's a very thick book, but this is Annie Leibovitz, A Photographer's Life, 1990 to 2005. And the reason I picked this book in particular is I think it really represents what I love so much about Annie's work, and that is that she is just this consummate photographer. She's constantly shooting. She eats, sleeps, breathes, and lives photography. And this book is kind of a collection of some commercial work, but a lot of personal work that she did. And I think it's really hard and really rare to see artists open their personal lives up as much as she does in this book. But I think that's just part of who Annie Leibovitz is, and I think that is what makes her so special, is that she's willing to share so much. And I think it really gives the photos a really, more of a sense of depth than what you're going to see with stuff that isn't as personally connected with an artist. And that's why we're going to look at this book today. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the book we're looking at today is Annie Leibovitz, A Photographer's Life, 1990 to 2005. This is an easy book to find, and I think it's absolutely essential in any photographer's collection. Annie Leibovitz is a very important figure who's alive and working today, and she's had a long career that really started with touring with the Rolling Stones and working for Rolling Stone magazine, both in the 60s. And what's interesting about this book is you can tell, I think with any great artist, that Annie Leibovitz is she's a photographer. I mean, that's all it is. It's just a big part of her life. And so what this book presents actually is a balance between commercial work that she's done as well as very personal shots that she's taken. Her well-documented romantic relationship with Susan Sontag travels. I mean, she was constantly, or is constantly, taking pictures, and stuff like this is just, I don't think I've ever seen anybody who's just a more natural gifted photographer than Annie Leibovitz. It's just amazing. Most of this book is in black and white, and just some of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. Extreme range of what she can do as far as skill goes. What's interesting are these shots of Demi Moore. And there's definitely a Richard Avedon influence here. And when we looked at, if you watch the episode that we did on Richard Avedon, there's a shot that's very similar to this with, extra stuff in the frame that is not necessary. But being able to do a pregnant shot of a celebrity, very interesting take on that. This was, done for commercial purposes. And then there's shots like this of, that were taken, in political crisis. Obviously, you have this bicycle with a bloodstain. Very dramatic image. Now, Annie Leibovitz is also a very successful and well-known photographer, so she is obviously able to travel places and pick up stuff that most of us are not going to do in our careers. However, I think the fact that she's always got a camera with her is extremely important. She's just shooting all the time, and when something comes up like this, that's obviously a very provocative, emotional shot, she's there to get it, and the camera's with her. And I think that's extremely important to understand. This is such a wonderful portrait of Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken, both sitting in a hotel with Dennis Hopper with no shirt. This is, Annie Leibovitz classic stuff. I mean, creating this weird sense of what's going on in the composition, even with celebrities that most of us are familiar with and understand and have seen. This is a portrait of William S. Burroughs, which William S. Burroughs was one of the poets of the Beat generation and had some pretty turbulent things dealing with in his own life. But what's interesting, first of all, seeing these two shots together, the profile as far as in contrast to the straight-on headshot. Also interesting is William S. Burroughs has obviously these very interesting facial features with the way the skin is kind of wrinkled and falls. And you can see that she shot this with a really tight depth of field. The eyes are in focus, and a little bit of the nose, and everything else kind of fades out to a blur. And I think it creates really an interesting composition, especially if you know about William S. Burroughs. I think that is extremely interesting and extremely, here's another case scenario. You have Willie Nelson here. and talk a little bit about compositionally what is happening here. And again, I don't know if this was intended on her part, but obviously the central focal point is the long hair here. But there's also a compositional technique that you need to understand, that when you place objects close to the edge of the composition, your eye is drawn to them. They create more tension, and you can see that his face is pretty much right up at the edge, and he's looking off the edge of the composition, and that really creates that sense of balance, even though the hair takes up the majority of the shot, maybe the denim jacket, but the focal point does become the face, and it's because it's on the edge of that photo. If this were placed differently, I think you would have a different perception of this photo. If you brought him down slightly, it would bring it out of balance. So just a really wonderful sense of composition that she just kind of naturally has. This image kind of being one of the opposites of that. This very candid shot of Bruce Springsteen, I believe this was taken in Philadelphia, 1999, and just in a very relaxed setting, working on a set list for a show, perhaps. And she worked a lot with Rolling Stone, did a lot of music photography, and a lot impacted her. This is what's really special about this book, is the fact that she is willing to share parts of her personal life, and they're displayed here. And while these are probably not the greatest shots she's ever taken from an artistic perspective, they're very, very good shots. You see this really cool influence from somebody like Henri Cartier-Bresson that creeps into these. The fact that she shows all her outtakes. I mean, you really get a sense in here that Annie does not take bad photos, and or at least that's what I think. Richard Avedon's camera, which is this big Sinar, nothing fancy about it, it's kind of grungy, but you're seeing this from the perspective that a model would see it from. This is also followed with a portrait of Richard Avedon, who was kind of a closed-off individual and certainly did not have working relationships with other photographers, and Annie Leibovitz was an exception to that. I know the two were very close and were friends. Again, this personal work, and it's almost kind of uncomfortable just to show these in a podcast, but Susan Sontag, when she eventually succumbed to death, Annie Leibovitz was in the hospital. These were taken with a cell phone, and she did kind of these just emotionally amazing shots of something that was obviously personally devastating to her, and she's willing to share these, which is rare, I think. And with a book like this, you get a glimpse into somebody's personal life, and it's, just the fact that they shared these photos is just simply amazing. Again, taken and put into black and white. And these kind of have, an interesting throwback to them, I think, to some of the death portraits that you saw, or that we've seen from the 18th and 19th century, where, with glass plates and collide and process, a lot of times people would want to preserve the image of family members who had passed away. And these definitely have kind of a throwback look to some of that. But an extremely emotional time for Annie. She lost her father around the same time, and these are out of control. These shots are from the funeral. And again, incredible shots. I think if somebody close to me had passed away, bringing a camera to the funeral is not even the first thing I would think of. But again, this is Annie Leibovitz. This is what she does. This is who she is, and she's constantly making images and shooting photos. And for that, I think it's pretty amazing. Just simple shots, like these are some notes from Susan Sontag. These are notes from The Volcano Lover, Berlin, 1990. This wonderful sense of just always having the camera, always being ready to shoot. New York through the studio window. And I think that most of us need to strive to be there. Things that tell a story without somebody there. This was known as the Pawn House, Clifton Point 2000. It's just a computer. Somebody's obviously been working. If you know Annie, you know who it was. But it almost doesn't matter. This is something she was extremely good at too. There's some wonderful shots of Mikhail Baryshnikov she did, but this is Masiko Ushita and with Jesse Mills, the Marlboro Music Festival, taken backstage, a point of rehearsal, discussing the piece, and just a wonderful sense of storytelling, that there's a lot there. It's amazing. Anyway, that's Annie Leibovitz. This is, again, known as the photographer's life. This is really essential to anybody who is a photographer to be able to understand her as a person and her as an artist. Okay, so that's Annie Leibovitz. The Photographer's Life, 1990 to 2005. I will put a link to this in the show notes, which you can find at thepublicbroadcast.com. Annie's still alive today, and she still is a wonderful photographer and very well respected. She got her start in the 60s, shooting for Rolling Stone magazine, traveling on the road with the Rolling Stones was one of her first major assignments. Kind of got addicted to the rock and roll lifestyle at that point, which whether that was good or not good for her is a moot point, but she was able to immerse herself in the subject. And that's really hard and rare, like I've said, for photographers to do. And so anyway, I really recommend you check out this book. It's a great place to start if you're not familiar with her work. There's several other publications that you can find that are mostly compilations of professional work that she's done for commercial purposes. But this one is the one that's really special to me. So anyway, once again, this has been The Art of Photography. Remember, you can follow us on the Twitter. If you want to follow me, my handle is @TedForbes. Or if you just want to follow the show and get show updates and find out when they come out, you can follow @AOP_podcast. So anyway, once again, this has been The Art of Photography, and thank you for watching.